that led me to the Adventure Zone, and the Adventure Zone is just the most amazing group of people doing this incredibly entertaining Dungeons and Dragons game. And I was like, well, if there was ever going to be a time, this is the time. So that's sort of how I embarked on this. And fortunately, these people, these good, talented folks, had enough faith in this that they were willing to go along for the ride. So, so the game tomorrow, the story has been in place for a long, long time. The actual sort of details of it, I've been hammering out over the last 6 months, and it's ready to go. I hope that the experience we're going to provide to you guys is not just fun and funny. I hope that the story is pretty interesting, and there's some unexpected things that happen, some twists and some turns that sort of keep you intrigued, because it's supposed to be like 4 hours long, which is really long.
Exactly 4 hours, no
right,
more.
no more than that. Don't ever tell your actors it's more than 4 hours. They won't show up. So it's gonna be 4 hours, and but we are gonna have an intermission like halfway through. Don't sweat it. I was at the screening of the Lord of the Rings movie that was 3 hours long back in the day, and there was a man sitting behind me who about halfway through the movie was like, "It's too damn long." Like actually said that in the theater. That's hilarious. Who are you talking to, sir? The screen can't hear you. I don't know, but that was great. Anyway, I understand it's too damn long. I get that. So everybody's gonna go pee about and I will hold you to that. You have to go pee.
So sit at the back of the room.
Yes, it'll make it easier for you. So 2 hours in, intermission, and then dramatic conclusion of the Dungeon Booth game. So this panel is supposed to be about us talking about sort of how we came to Dungeons and Dragons, and not just Dungeons and Dragons, but tabletop gaming in general. And I say that because the first game that I ever played was probably 6th grade, and it was a game called GURPS. Anybody ever heard of GURPS? Why would you ever name anything GURPS?
Isn't that what AIDS was called in the 80s?
Oh, God.
We're going to start there.
I actually used to get it confused with the medical condition GERD.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
what's
GERD?
It's like a gastrointestinal.
It's a reflux thing.
Gastroesophageal reflux disorder.
It is.
That's impressive.
It is. It is.
What's up,
I like
Kim?
an acronym.
I like a good acronym.
So 1992, people were playing games like Car Wars, and people were playing games like what's the steampunk game that I can't remember now, and Shadowrun 2. That's not really the one I'm thinking of.
We played some Big Eyes Small Mouth back in the day. Bessums, the
Okay.
anime.
Yes,
That was some Louisiana
I
on
remember
there.
that.
Bessums.
Bessums.
There was a Star Wars game back in the day too, and I remember one time we got into a fight with Darth Vader, and it's funny because when it's like 6th graders playing tabletop games, it's in my experience, it's typically just people trying to one up each other. So it's like who can think of the coolest thing? That's going to be the game, and so I remember I was like, I'm just gonna attack Darth Vader here, and I was, no one. I was nothing. I wasn't even a Jedi. I was like, I had a blaster. I'm like, I'm gonna attack Darth Vader, and I remember the loving detail that Brian, my friend, used to describe Darth Vader using the Force to pull my head off. He even acted it out, and Brian was not an actor. Like, he was an athlete, but he was like acting out Darth Vader, causing my head to pop off of my body slowly using the Force powers, and it was the coolest thing, even though I died. So for me, it was an escape from feeling like I didn't fit in. Who does fit in middle school? Is there a kid who does? Oh,
No.
there he
Of
is.
course.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad I finally met one. I was a theater kid, and I was a troublemaker, always getting in trouble. The story goes that my first day of kindergarten, the principal was called. That is true. I went to the principal my very first day of school. And it just kind of went downhill from there. I got in trouble a lot. And the cool thing about tabletop games specifically was there were rules. The problem was, if you give me rules, I'm just gonna find out how to break them. And but there were rules, but you were encouraged to creatively be flexible, right? So even though there are rules, if you can think of something cool that's interesting and a way around it that could be fun, that's what it's all about, right? So I was like, this is way better than playing Clue or Monopoly. Like, this is fantastic. It also really keyed into the performance aspect for me. So I was real deep into theater at the time, and which was my parents, thank God, were just like, we have to find an outlet for this kid or he's going to jail. And fortunately, theater was that for me. And so I really got into the improv. I didn't know it was improv. I was just making stuff up, but the improv aspect of it was just like a revelation for me. Like not just my improv. I loved other people improving because that gave me ideas, which gave somebody else ideas, which gave somebody else ideas, and it was like this was a level of make believe that felt like we were doing something illegal. It was so good, you know. So that's sort of where I started, and I don't know, going from there. Like I had a friend who really got into Warhammer and really got into the painted pieces. I did not have enough money growing up to get that kind of stuff. That stuff's expensive. But I loved it. I thought it was cool. Now there was an element to it that I was sort of like, we're spending a lot of time right now to figure out whether this is 40 yards away or 35 yards away. And
you gotta get a tape measure with a laser sight.
Every moment of that, I was just like, something about it took me out of the realism of it. I was just like, I'm stepping back and I'm watching these two people argue about whether it's 40 meters or 30 meters, and I'm realizing like these are just minis on a table, and what are we doing right now? Now, you know, everybody's the other cool thing about tabletop gaming is it's like everybody, you know, there's no wrong flavor of this. Like it's just whatever scratches the itch for you. And some people really like the crunchy stuff. They like the math, and absolutely go for that. I like the storytelling. Like I like the character building. I like the things unfolding that you don't expect. And so oftentimes in combat, I just will get to the point where I'm just like, they all run away. I don't know. This is boring. You know, like can we get to the next part? So there was Warhammer for a little while. I got into that. And then I started writing stuff. I started making my own stuff. The very first role-playing game I ever made, I still have. And I created it on just ruled notebook paper. I drew all the pictures. I wrote all the scenarios, handwritten, and it was called Conquest of the Silver Saber. I was in 6th grade. That was that was the coolest title I could think of for a thing.
Do you still have it? That
I
notebook?
do. Yeah, I do. In the game, the main bad guy is German Nazis ally themselves with Iraqi militants, and they become the Jiraqi forces.
You taking a world history class then? You just
I was just like, I need some bad guys here, and so the characters that I created were, you know, all your sort of stereotypical characters you'd expect a 6th grader to make, with the exception of one character who was like an 8-year-old boy who used a flamethrower. And I thought he was the coolest character, and my friends never wanted to play as this character. And at a certain point, I was just like, why don't you try, you know, as this guy? And he was like, I don't want to be a baby. I'm like, oh. Like, I wasn't thinking about it that way at all. I was just thinking about the contrast of an 8-year-old with a flamethrower is hilarious and cool. But they didn't want to be a baby. So that was I don't know, I remember that moment as being like, this isn't actually about me. Like, what makes this fun is that I'm creating things that are fun for the people that are playing the game. That's what makes it fun for everybody. It's not like I'm going to write the great American novel and then everybody's just going to read it to me. Like, that isn't fun. Like, nobody's going to have any fun with that. So that sort of formed me a little bit as a game master. I sort of realized, like, the cool thing is not being the one who comes up with all the ideas. It's just creating the conditions for other people to come up with all the cool ideas, which is very freeing also, if you can take that perspective. So fast forward, and I sort of kept doing, the acting thing, and I found out that actors, almost all actors, have some roots in tabletop gaming. And I don't know what that is, but like, I guess it's the performative aspect or something,
Yeah.
and it's that they're getting into trouble, and I don't know, but because it's the devil. If you live in Texas, it was definitely the devil
Or
when I was a kid.
Louisiana.
Oh
Yeah.
boy!
I shared this yesterday. I had a teachers have an intervention for me. I got pulled into a counselor's office, and they were just concerned because I was a good student.
Absolutely.
And they heard I was getting mixed up in this Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, I'm playing a girl version of Duo Maxwell from Gundam Wing and living my best life. You are not taking this from me. But
Love
that
Gundam Wing, by the way.
that performative thing, I spent a lot of my childhood just trying to get people to engage in imagination with me. I love Halloween. I love Christmas. I love any moment in time where we all collectively suspend disbelief and enjoy something just wholeheartedly. I love a theme party, any excuse to dress up. Like, I am going extra. I did just spend like a week gluing LEDs into a wig from eBay to go to a one-night event at Disneyland. But
and it was worth it.
It was.
I saw the photos.
The pictures are amazing. But it was that thing of finding people who were also sort of misfit, outcast nerd kids, because I was a theater, band, straight A student, and nobody liked me. But I remember going to my friend Opal's house, and they were playing like a family D&D game. It was like what they did together, and I got to be just a one-off NPC, and I was Fee the Fae, and I cast fairy lights, and like my life changed.
Yeah.
I remember just feeling it, and they were like, you're really good at we believed you were the character. And I was just like, it's like applause. And I'm like Tinkerbell, if you don't clap, I die. So it was just that group aspect. I got community, which is super important to me. I got to perform, and we were all in it together.
Yes.
So that's, yeah.
It's a beautiful thing when it works out that way, and oftentimes it doesn't, and that's okay too. There's lots of different flavors to this, and I've had play sessions, on the other side of this coin, where I'm just like, this is brutal. Like, when are we? How much longer are we doing this? I got with a group one time, and this was just some randos that I met through another friend, and I showed up, and the guy was like, I've got a pre-gen character for you, and here we go. This is kind of a campaign that's already in progress. I'm like, okay, so I'm joining in, and then about halfway through, the DM passes me a note, and he's like, the person to your left is a werewolf. And no one else in the party knows that, and you've learned this information by seeing them at night, and they were hunting livestock, and you have to decide in this game session what you're going to do with that information. And I was like, this is awesome. This was just a very basic game that just became an incredible game. This is going to be awesome. But here's the problem: he didn't know me from Adam, but if you give me that card, I'm going to come up with something you don't expect, because that's who I am. What he wanted me to do is, like, I guess confront this werewolf, and then we'd get in a fight, and then we'd have a long, drawn-out fight. And instead, what I did is I went to this werewolf, and I was like, I want to be a werewolf. How do I get to be a werewolf? And the DM did everything but kick me out of the game. I mean, it got to a point where I just realized, like, I probably just am not going to do this anymore with these people. But yeah, you got to be real open to that, I mean, and there are games where people kind of just want to do what they've already done, and that's fine too. But there are people who aren't going to want to do that, so it's so there is sort of that element of it's great when it's great, and when it's not, it's still great, but it's just not as good as it could be, I guess. Yeah. So Kyle, how did you come to tabletop gaming?
Wait, so what does tabletop gaming encompass?
I think Magic the Gathering is a part of it.
So I started playing Magic the Gathering in about 1996. I was 9. Or if you go to my IMDb, 20. I was born in 87. And it was, I was always into reading fantasy and stuff like that. And so Magic really appealed to me. Friend down the street really got me into it. We started playing. And I guess like everyone else, except maybe Mallory, my dad was like, what is this that you're playing? And at that time, Magic and D&D both were getting swooped up in Christian conservative
Pokemon
media.
too, because
Pokemon.
in '96 I was Pokemoning, going to the Books a Million for tournaments with my link cable and being like, I don't have any 100-level Charizards like you. And I definitely did, but I was getting those little boys to give me their Charizards. Sorry. But my grandmother, I grew up with my grandmother who's deeply Southern Baptist. And I remember she was always strangely liberal about certain things like that. But she asked me, she was like, "I heard these Pokemon are the devil. I heard they're demons." And she
I heard
seriously
this.
had, it's like the coalition of grandmothers got together and
sent out their
they had an
notebook.
Apple Brown Betty and talked about the demons. And it was really neat. I was able to show her. I had like, I had the game and I had some cards, which I never learned the rules to the card. I just like the art. And I was like, look at this fat Pikachu and you tell me how this is wrong. And she was just like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, and she okayed it.
Yeah, she gave a lecture she shame on you'd our whole congregation over Harry Potter.
Whoa.
Because that was a big thing. And I was so afraid because I was so into it. These imaginary worlds were my sanctuary. Like it was a real rough time as
Right.
a kid, and that's where I lived. It's where I was happy. And then suddenly we had like a town hall meeting about it, and I was like, "Y'all, just be cool, be cool."
Can you guys just be cool?
Did you grow up in the town from Footloose? Like,
A little bit, except everyone dances and drinks because it's Louisiana. It's a weird dichotomy. But I remember my grandmother standing up and saying, "Shame on all of you for trying to take away anything that encourages children to read. They're all so excited,
Yeah.
and for you to try to take that's a sin." And I was just like, I know.
and she dropped her mic and left.
She did, and everybody
That's
stood
awesome.
up and clapped, and then we did dance to Footloose. It was crazy.
Kevin Bacon appeared, and
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I did not have any of that. My dad just shut it down. D&D, Magic. Actually, Pokemon was fine. My dad actually would go to, there was a Christian bookstore he would go to. It'd be like, oh, we really want to watch this movie. And you could take your VHS tapes to this place, and they would go through and edit it down.
yeah.
What?
And they'd be like,
I
all right, here
remember
you
that.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my experience. But
Any of the vicious parts they
Yeah.
would take out. Yeah.
Did DVD just ruin them?
Yeah,
Well,
probably
I
did,
mean,
yeah.
they've way since cooled out, so it's all
Oh,
good.
okay.
But so Magic the Gathering, I really liked, but I couldn't play it anymore. And then Pokemon came around, and so that I didn't know that there was a whole uproar with Pokemon. Pokemon was fine, but so I was the kid who wanted to play the game. I didn't care about trading and collecting, but no one else wanted to play. They would just pull out their binders and be like, "Oh no, I have that." I'd be like, well, "Let's play." And so I eventually lost interest. But then instead of trading card games, I really got into board games. I still remember the first time I played Risk, and that's when I fell in love with board games. Like I love D&D, but board games is where I'm really at.
Did
You
you ever
like
play
this-
Hero Quest?
I don't think so.
Anybody Hero Quest? Okay. So Hero Quest is how I'm introducing. I'll show you Hero Quest.
Okay, sweet.
It's how I'm introducing D&D to my kids, and
Okay.
it's fantastic. It's a board game version of D&D,
Okay.
and I'll tell you about it later.
I would love that. But yeah, anyone know Merchants and Marauders?
Yeah.
It's my favorite board game. I love Merchants and Marauders. But yeah, and so then just kind of over the years, just really getting into different kinds of board games. I have like 8 different versions of Risk. Star Wars Risk is the best, by the way, if you ever want to play a fun variation of
If you ever
Risk.
want to just alienate everyone you love, just play Risk.
Yeah.
Graham and I almost broke up over a no holds barred game of Risk very early on because I
no.
betrayed him. And I was just like, there are no rules here. Get good.
I have played
get
in a game
good.
where the board was flipped because I convinced the guy I was playing. I was like, "Yeah, dude, just leave that weak. That's perfectly fine. I'm focusing over here," and I just totally destroyed him. He flipped the board, and the game was over. So yeah, just don't do that.
Friendships gained and lost.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's
In
great.
these
Yeah,
games.
that's the risk that you
That
take.
is
Yeah,
the
that's the
risk.
risk.
That's why they call it that.
That is the risk.
But I didn't ever really play D&D until after high school.
Come up for you.
Ooh, middle school, really. I remember I lived in Wichita, Kansas. What up, Kansans? Not a single one in this room. And doing community theater in middle school, and that went on through college. I got my degree in theater, and I loved it, but I never played tabletop games, with the exception of maybe the Game of Thrones tabletop game. I don't know. This is way before the TV show.
Sure.
It was the books, and that was really interesting for me, but that was my only foray into it. And then, one day, Christopher Waycamp called.
Hello, Mallory. Would you like to play this amazing new game?
yes,
It's called
thank you.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Sounds lovely. Pencil me in.
Yes, we'd love you to join us.
Well, and Mallory, I think when I talked to you about it, you were so excited about it that I was like, I don't think I even asked you what experience you had with it. You were just like,
But
I want to do
clearly.
that. I want to do that. I was like, okay.
Yes, and I was so into it. And I actually have a lot of friends that play D&D. So I said I want to practice beforehand. So I went up to this group of friends that I have that they play a campaign pretty much every week. And I was like, hey, could you maybe play a game with me? Like, I just want to learn and get experience. And they were like, no.
What?
Yes. So
What a twist.
it's interesting as an adult because I think a lot of people play for so long that this is their group of people that they've been
Yeah.
playing with for so long. A new person coming in, is kind of a shakeup. They did eventually invite me to play a game with them.
Oh,
so.
good.
I like, we
How
just
did it
needed to
go?
process.
What was it? How did it go? What happened?
That's my third point. I was busy, so I never played it. So that's the hard part. I think as adults, as
Yeah.
kids,
Oh,
like
sure.
you just ride your bike over, to your neighbor's house, you play a game. As adults, to get people in a room for 4 hours
It's
to
hard.
play a game.
4 hours.
It's only gonna be 4
Only
hours.
4
Only
hours.
4.
Only 4 hours.
Only going to be 4 hours.
Yes.
It's hard.
So for game 2, Tia Ballard, it was going to be her first D&D game, and she didn't want it to be.
She expressed some concerns,
So
yeah.
she came to me because I had done this game and I had played. I had never DM'd, and she was like, help. So I actually DM'd and made a quest for the first time to get Tia acclimated, and it took our schedules until the day before. So she played her first 2 games back to back. They were and we had our little campaign was my husband Rico Fajardo, who also Axon will be here tomorrow, and Tia, and it's like herding cats. So like we thought we were gonna start mid-afternoon, but then like Rico had a thing, so we didn't start until almost 11 p.m. We went until like 4 in the morning. It was ludicrous. We're all just like dead
Yeah.
at this table, and I'm
Yeah.
like, someone kill this magic carpet. I halved its hit points.
Yeah.
Just stop rolling so bad. But it was really fun, and she had very little experience with fantasy. Like, she has a ton of experience with imagination
Sure.
play, but like she's all Mark Twain steamboats, like
Right.
no Lord of the Rings.
Elves
She's just
or anything like that, yeah.
what does that do?
Yeah.
We're trying to explain a halfling to her.
Yeah.
Was amazing. She's just, but yeah. So it was sort of a paint by numbers.
Sure.
1, 2, 3 quest. We meet at the end. We go through an enchanted forest. You have an encounter there. You have to charge the castle, and there's an evil vizier. Like
Sure.
it was just like, here's every trope. Go forth.
Now you know them. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my husband's character, Hanson Jobbers,
What a name.
Great name.
inspired Twigsdale because he has a hairy tummy that he's constantly scratching. Yeah,
Rubbing his
and
tummy.
Interesting.
So you're welcome from my
That's-
husband.
yeah, that's amazing.
Which I think was just himself. Just
Actually doing it.
big hair man. But
Yeah, Tia was when Tia came to the game, and if she was here, she could tell you more about it. But when Tia came to the game, she had a piece of paper with her, and she was drawing the whole time, especially in the beginning. And I was like, this is her comfort zone. She's getting to a place where she can, kind of inhabit this character, and she's sketching and things like that. And at the end of the game, you guys don't know this, but I always go through and take pictures of everything on the table just as it is.
Oh no.
So that we can sort of have that as an artifact, but also because it's interesting to look back on. And her pictures were of, sort of elements of what you're talking about. Now that I know that, like these were sort of some of the things that were in her artwork. And Tia's, if you haven't listened to game 2, Tia's approach with Twigsdale was super fascinating and absolutely did not go like I expected it was going to go at all. I sort of had an idea in my head of what Twigsdale was going to be, and then she took it in a direction that I did not plan for at all. And that's great. That's like the best, really. So because it's interesting.
Well, we should also call out that we have Jameis in the room.
We
on
do.
the
Hello,
front
Jameis.
row.
Yes, Steven Sanders is with us
Steven
today.
Sanders and also Sally Hayden.
And Sally Hayden,
Yes.
Etheldred Bennett from
Game
Game 2
2
as well.
My comrades.
So we had a voice actor scheduled for Game 2 who had a conflict and couldn't come, and fortunately Steven was able to step in for us at the last moment as Jameis, and he arrived to my house a little bit late. Because which is very unlike Steven, I believe, because he got into a fender bender on the way, and then he was just like, I'm just gonna go play D&D anyway.
I've played before also.
It was your first time, yes.
That's right. Whoa.
And if you listen to Game 2, I mean, you would never listen to Game 2 and be like, oh, this is this dude's first time, because Steven's whole attitude was like, I'm just gonna go with this thing. So I would there were moments where I was asking Steven questions about like his past history for his character, who he didn't even really know this character. He's filling in for somebody, and he was just coming up with the most hilarious explanations for why. For instance, I asked him at one point, okay, this friend of yours who died. You had a friend, and he was your comrade in arms, and he died in your arms during that moment. What was the last thing he said to you? And Steven, like, no hesitation, just do it. So many moments like that throughout Game 2. I can't plan for that kind of stuff. I mean, that's so great, though.
So for Game 2, was this you? It was like your first time, and Tia's second time by like 8 hours.
24 hours, yeah.
Wow.
I love it. I've played with people who, if you say, for example, we had a necromancer in Game 2.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point, I said, this appears to be, somehow they figured out this looked like it could be the lair of a necromancer. And everybody just kind of kept going. And then at another point, Tia was like, what's a necromancer? Like, you can't play D&D with humans who don't know what a necromancer is. That's impossible. So I love that, man. I dig that to the extreme.
Well, she came in and knowing what a bullywug was, so that was my contribution.
That's good.
Well, to what you said, that's a credit to how good of a DM you are.
Yeah.
That you can wrangle 3 people who have barely played,
Including
one guy who was late, and make it awesome.
It was awesome. It ended up being awesome because the people involved had so much fun. If people are having fun, then it's fun, right? And if they're not, then it's not. It's real simple. So,
And I have never successfully been a DM. I want to.
tell us about your experience of it, because you told me this story, and I think it's kind of interesting.
Well, I feel like it's kind of up my alley in that I'm kind of a control freak. So
You're
maybe
a
it's not
director
it's the
for a
opposite.
living. So
That's true.
Yeah.
I like to wrangle actors, But I feel like I just analyzed too much, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this awesome campaign. It's gonna do this, this, and this. And this was actually for the Mistborn tabletop game. Any Mistborn fans? The game's great, but basically I was like, all right, I want to make this cool thing. I'm gonna have this battle, and just in hindsight, I should have just made like, boom, like they take down this guy, like maybe 2 hits or whatever, and move on, because I realized later a lot for them to do, but I like bogged them down in this battle because I was like, I'm gonna make this battle awesome. So I just put in all these obstacles in the way, and I made the guys like, I guess, way stronger than I should have, and we're just sitting there like battling like 4 goons for like an hour and a half. And like by the end of it was just like, let's go play Smash Bros. And I was like, all right, yeah. And so I was just like, ugh. And so I tried to DM Star Wars tabletop, and that one went a little better. I ended up doing that mostly on a computer.
Okay.
Inspired by.
Is this the modern one? Is this the Fantasy Flight one, or is this the old one?
No, it's the old one.
The old one,
But
okay.
I was doing most of it on a laptop because I was inspired by a friend of mine who he DMs, and he has like a computer monitor that he brings out, and the icons for all the characters. And he's like, all right, you go in here, and you can see him going, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I want to do something like that,
Yeah.
and it was disastrous. I just didn't know what I was doing, and so I would like to have another shot to DM, but.
You will someday.
Yeah, you've
you
learned.
you must. I think the more you do this is like being an actor too. The more you act, you get to work with other directors, and then what do you know? Pretty soon you know a thing or two, and then you want to try your hand at directing. And like DMing is the same idea. Like if you play enough, you eventually get to a point where you're like, I know the kind of games I like, and I could make something like that for somebody else. If you haven't tried DMing yourself, I mean, the best time to do it is yesterday, and the next best time is today. Just do it. Just fail fast. You know, that's the answer to almost anything. Just do it and fail, and then you're gonna learn. And it hurts, but that's okay.
That's true. I now know what I've done wrong.
Man.
So game 11, I'll guess DM.
Love it.
You'll play?
I will tell you that since I've been working on this game for so long, since I was 17 years old, basically, I've got something like 26 games. If I want, I mean, I could really do this thing.
Cool.
I mean, I haven't even introduced the big bad yet, and we're way into this at this point. So
I'm
I have a question.
intrigued. I can't wait to see what happens on Sunday at 6 p.m. in main events.
In main events.
In main events. Bring
Yes.
a friend.
Please do come with us.
So the more you've been talking about this, so I mentioned Mistborn earlier, and Brandon Sanderson with Mistborn has created this like super universe where all of his, most of his books are all in this same universe, the Cosmere.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing with the Dungeon Booth? Is each game disconnected but a part of the
What?
same universe?
Well,
Or is this a no comment
That's some
situation?
deep lore.
I will tell you that in game 1, Thok punches the head off of a guy named Gardren. You recall?
Yes.
And then in game 2, the players all go down underground and they go into a room where there's a black lake, and there's a creepy necromancer standing in the lake, and then a head falls down a hole in the ceiling, and then a giant undead
I got goosebumps.
monster.
I really did.
So guess what?
Guys, we were
That was the same day, y'all.
No way!
Oh my gosh, mind blown.
Same.
You're good at this.
Same day.
So
I can't give away a lot more. But
for me, like my favorite part is character creation.
Yeah,
It's
man.
where I live. How do you guys approach it? Because I mentioned this a little bit yesterday that I am like weirdly like hippie and zen about it. Like I obviously like sit down and start thinking about like classes and when we're doing like little one-shot campaigns and stuff like actually the Dungeon Booth really inspired a resurgence of D&D in my life.
Nice.
Because I didn't have anybody after college to play with. And then, so I did my little one-shot, and my husband was super inspired, and he ran a one-shot, and then Rico was super inspired, and he wrote a one-shot that we've been trying to play for like 10 months. But he invited like 3 new people, and now there are like 8 of us, and it's like, it's
Yeah.
never gonna happen, Rico. Come on,
Yeah.
be real.
Yeah.
But, thinking about like who we're gonna play and their play styles, Rico is a dark backstory murder hobo.
he is.
And so like wanting to like support that and not like show up with a paladin where immediately we're just gonna be like, I smite you. So I'll sit down and try to like think about it, but it feels like for me they sort of come from the ether and they tell me who they are.
Yes.
There's something to that.
Yeah,
There's
it's the way
something
that
to
I create, it's the way that I write, and it sort of is like a muse thing. I very often play a bard, so here I am.
Here you are.
So how does it happen for you guys?
For me, since I was new to D&D, I didn't want any sort of race that maybe was too complex, lots of spells. So I think Christopher helped me out and figured out halfling fighter made a lot of sense. But I always have loved writing. I remember when I was a kid, I would write these books and I would write them out, and the plot didn't even exist. It went on for so long. Like, it was terrible, but it was sort of that stream of consciousness, where I started creating something and it just started going. It's similar to what you were saying. And so that's what happened with Agatha. Her backstory just sort of unfolded. I started writing it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. And that was really my first time to be able to create a character like that. And I love her. I've pretty much been playing her exclusively.
Yeah.
She's going to be a hard one to depart from.
We'll
but-
kill her. It'll be fine. And then you'll just get a new one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
There you go. That's fine. Just like the puppies.
I learned I learned the term murder hobo this weekend.
Oh, all right.
And when you were describing, you're like, oh, sometimes you get these guys murder hobos, and I was like, that's me. And so I thought was actually, I think, the third option. I was like, Chris, I want to play this half dragon murderous guy who hates his comrades. And
You
you're
said
like,
you wanted to
no.
be a vampire by
Vampire?
far. Yeah, like a vampire paladin.
Chaotic evil.
Yeah, like a vampire paladin. or
Chaotic,
something.
evil,
Yeah.
paladin, vampire.
Paladin vampire.
Do you have
Yeah.
a dartboard?
Well, and so that's kind of where I ended up landing with Thought, because I really like like a halfling barbarian is what you are?
Fighter.
Fighter, yeah.
Like that's pretty opposite. I like that too. So a half orc monk, I don't think it's very typical.
Well, they have as some of you know, they get bonuses to their strength. Well, strength for a monk is really not that useful. You can carry stuff, but you're not going to use it for your attacks. You're going to use dexterity for your attacks for the most part. So that was the contrast that you liked. Yeah. And then that led to your backstory in a way.
right,
And that's one of the things that helps me sort of define characters too. I like pulling things from my own life that I'm working on. Now, this is not necessarily, maybe it is hippie-ish, but when I'm creating a character, I want to be able to have that character go through some sort of arc, like a character arc is ideal. It doesn't always work that way. But so if there's something going on in my own life, like for instance, I played a game recently where I played a wizard named Zalvin Shamwow.
I was gonna ask
Zalvin
that.
Shamwow.
Yeah, and he was a traveling wizard who sold basically snake oil, and that was his career, and he was apparently very successful at it. But at the time, I was going through a transition where I was like trying to leave my day job and just do voice acting all the time, and I'm constantly worried about money. So I'm just going to make a character who's constantly only focused on money. That's the only thing he's worried about. And then when I come to the table, I'm going to take all that anxiety and turn it into a character arc for this character. And it's going to be great and cathartic and funny. And it was, I hope.
Oh my god.
For me, at
He
least.
was amazing.
Thanks.
Incredible.
Honestly, the work that you put in, you're so creative, like as a DM, and then it was neat to sit down with you as a player because we did a game with a bunch of other people, but Mallory was playing Agatha, and I was playing owl character named Pinion, who's amazing. You're gonna love him. But like seeing you as a player also have that inventiveness where like he has these potions and he doesn't necessarily know what they do.
No.
And so there are roles for like sort of a set of what each of these.
It's a table of effects, basically.
Yes.
So like you've got 20 effects, and you roll a d20, and whatever comes up, that's the effect of the potion. It does what it says it's going to do. So it's a heal potion. It does heal you. But then you roll, and it also makes ants crawl out from one ear, crawl across your face, and go to the other ear and vanish, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It added a lot of fun to the game
Yes.
and also an element of danger for the party to be like, I desperately need healing, but is it worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played
Well,
a
thank you.
similar character. The one time I was able to successfully play a chaotic evil character, the DM made me. Anytime I was going to make any sort of decision, he made me roll a d4, and I had like a set of like 4 options where it was like basically like try to kill one of your party members, do this. I don't remember what the options were, and so it was always like, all right, you burst into the room, like roll for initiative. Kyle first roll, and I'd be like. Oh, I try to attack Bryce, and they're like, no! And so it always ruined the fight, but it was
Locking
fun.
it up every
Yeah.
time. That's
I
funny.
love that as a way, though, to just mitigate you constantly
Yeah.
trying to kill
True.
people. It's a 1 in 4 chance that
Yeah.
you do get to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and so their
But-
favorite option, I remember, it was like if I rolled a 4, it was like do nothing. And so that was the most part. They're like, okay, he doesn't do anything cool, moving on. But like during the middle of a battle, it was like, all right, you got a guy right on you, he's attacking you, and I was like, oh, I sit on the ground.
Do nothing.
And they were just like, so.
It's fun to do things that are bad. It's fun to do bad things, as the meme goes.
Says the guy who got sent to the principal on his
lot.
first day. of
God, I have
kindergarten.
so many stories, y'all. Do you even want to know all the things I did? You probably don't.
Yeah,
I
let's hear
broke into the statute of limitations is way past. I broke into the water tower at my high school. Me and some friends with a sledgehammer, and then we climbed up to the top of the water tower. It was a full-size water tower. There's a service ladder inside water towers, if you don't know, that you just climb
you
straight
just
up
go right
to
on
the-
in there,
to the
kids.
inside of it. And we climbed up to the top, and up there at the top of our water tower, we just hung out for like the whole night. And then we came back down the ladder and just went home. That was our Saturday, one Saturday. We never got caught for that, thank goodness. And it just a lot of crazy things. But I've, thank goodness I have 3 children now, and they're going to be great. They're never going to do any of these things. So, that's really the good news here. How much time do we have? It is 8:44. We got about 10 minutes. So let's turn it over to you guys if you've got questions, or you want to just tell us your stories about tabletop.
Ash.
Hi. So I've GM'd a handful of games. Played D&D for a long time, other systems. And one of the games was had to get together and film it. We were gonna record it. We're all over the country, but we're gonna do it. We'll be a Roll20. As a DM for that game, I felt like the players were engaged, but when I went back and watched it, I was like, I don't know if this is fun to watch. How have you balanced that, or is it something you don't really? How do you approach that?
This is my answer is going to be an improv answer because I come from an improv background and in theater background. So my answer is improv is good if the people doing it are into it, and it usually isn't if it's not. And so I think that the technology oftentimes it seems like it enables us, actually gets in the way, especially with things that are. How does this percentage work? Like 80% of the things that we actually communicate are done with our bodies. They're not done with our words. And so if your connection sucks and you can hear what they're saying, but it's the video feed is stuttery, you're missing 80% of the conversation that's happening. And I also think there's a level of immediacy that's lost. But I also know that the realities are we have this incredible technology. We got to figure out how to leverage it and use it in the best way we possibly can. So were you doing things that you felt were unexpected?
I felt like I was doing it with voice actors.
Yeah.
I have an improv background too. I'm not as but I felt like they were definitely making decisions I wasn't ready for.
Okay.
Which is always fun.
That's good.
We split the party, which I didn't like. but
That's
happened.
always punish people for that. No.
I did.
That's good.
Because I was really thank you. I don't know. I felt like there's. I don't know. It's hard to know because
Sure.
we only recorded maybe a couple of campaigns.
Okay.
A couple of sessions worth of the campaign.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on longer when it changed.
Yeah.
But I just kind of worried that from an outside perspective, the story wasn't being conveyed well enough, or maybe we weren't far enough into it.
Who knows?
Or I know.
Have you gotten any feedback from anybody on it yet?
Yeah, people were like, "This is okay."
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, and I've talked to people too that, in some of the reviews, if you go on iTunes and read some of the reviews of Game 1, there's people who've written like, well, I've played Dungeons and Dragons and this is ridiculous, and there are so many deviations from the rules, and there are moments that don't make any sense, and I'm
Boo.
like, yeah, that's all true. Yeah, that's all true, 100%. So you're not gonna get everybody is gonna love what you do, and that's okay, as long as you do. So that's I don't know. That's what I think about it. Anybody else?
Kim.
How do you make a slime person? Because I went through all the races and I couldn't figure it out. But that's really just what I want to be.
Interesting. Okay.
Homebrew, man.
I have no idea.
I got close with a halfling elemental, but I was informed at the last minute that was in fact a very humanoid creature that might have had water on the outside of it, and that's no good.
What about a slime? What is it about the slime creature you're trying to get to that you want to do?
The
As
amorphous nature where it can look humanoid, but it doesn't have to at all times.
that's a mimic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a mimic. So you need to take a mimic, which is a monster, and you need to make basically a slime-focused mimic.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's in the monster manual. Yeah.
Nice.
It's like
I know there's 2 people.
We play a game that's like Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, there are times when we, as the player, know what our characters don't know, and they'll try and. But she's like, no, she doesn't see that. She's 5 feet tall. She does not see the trap. You stay down there. But but they trying to. How do you there have been times where we literally had to knock the person nope, you're not doing anything. You're knocked out now.
So I try to set up for people that metagaming is not fun.
Yeah.
Now, I don't ever want to stop people from doing things that are fun to them, but I try to give them examples of why metagaming is not fun in the game itself. And the way I do that is with NPCs. So If I'm playing as an NPC, it's much more interesting that the NPC doesn't know the things that I know. And so I don't ever say to them, you know, hey, this is how to do it. But I just play NPCs and enemies, and I show the limitations of their knowledge and their understanding of the world around them and these characters, most crucially. They don't know the things about these characters that these characters know about themselves. And most people will just pick up on that and sort of go with it as a tone for the game. Some people are like me. When I was in middle school, they just want to break the world. That's all they want to do. And you have to let them. I mean, you that's why they're there. Like that's what they want to do. And it's going to suck sometimes because you might want them to go down this path. And
What if it like breaks their own character? Like
those are the best times. I mean, I know it feels like it's not, but those are the best times. Especially when if your players are not reacting in the way that you expect, it means they don't understand that they can die. And it means that the consequences you're providing them are not real enough, most of the time. So I would say, and you're going to have players who are just like, they don't care either way, and they need to die. I mean, they do. They have to die. I mean, there's no other way around that. And that maybe it's the first time for them, and that's fine. Everybody has a first time.
We had a weird situation where we were fighting this giant alien creature, and one of our players, this alien creature happened to hate the specific species our person was trying to talk
He's
to.
a racist. Yeah.
He just didn't like humans, and they were
Okay.
the only human in our group.
Speciesist. Yeah.
And she tried to talk
Xenophobe?
to it.
Mhm.
It's like, stop! You don't have guile. You're our tank. Like, I'm gonna still try and talk to
Now,
it.
who is this telling? Is this a player trying to metagame them out of talking to this alien?
It was a tank trying to.
So the player was acting out of character. I benefited very much, especially in the beginning of my role playing career, with DMs who would pull you aside and say like, "Is this what your character would do?" Or they would just call out of character, and here's why. And you could make a case against that
Sure.
and say, we had a moment with where I had to check in with Limerick because
Yes.
I compartmentalize.
Yeah.
And being an actor, I do that constantly. I can't play a reaction that a character is not aware of. That's false. But like she is so about self-preservation, but she was gonna use this disguise and go up against this gargoyle, and I had to ask myself, is that out of character? Is that just what Felicia would do? And she made a case in my brain, and she was like, no, they're going to get me killed
Yeah.
if they try to do it, so I'm going to do it myself. I don't want to, but I have to.
Right.
And as a DM, I think you're well within your right to do that and say,
Yeah, of
tell
course.
me why, as a tank,
Of course.
you would try to use your charisma.
But if you've got somebody vindictively pushing that limit, they need
Yeah.
to die. I mean, that's what they have to have. They have to realize this is not a game. I mean, it feels like a game, and it looks like it's a game because look at all this game pieces and stuff. That if you play it that way, it's not fun. It's not a game. It has to not be a game, or else you're missing out on so much.
The
So-
DM can fudge rolls for a reason.
of course. Well, and that screen is there for a reason
Yeah.
too.
Oh.
There's a lot of good reasons for that screen.
And I'll say from an Agatha perspective, Agatha is like, she's a badass. She's going to be the first person out there fighting. And
Second
I'm
person.
Hey, Doc, come on now.
Oh no.
But I'm a scared person, so like actually it's kind of scary for me. Like when it starts, I start to get butterflies in my stomach because I'm not that type of person, but I know my character is, and so it's interesting making these decisions as someone that's unlike you. But I think that's the fun of the
And asking why, like Felicia said too. I mean,
Yes.
just Mallory's right, but asking why is the way to do it, and just be like, why do they do that? I had a player in Game 3, which is the game that's coming out after. We're gonna get it out in the next month or so. Aaron, ask me the question like, can I do this? And I said, my answer is always the same. This is D&D. You can do anything you want, and everything has consequences. That's the answer. I mean, that's the truth. So the answer is, yeah, you can do it, but why are you doing it? Maybe is a question to ask. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Jet Set Radio.
Hi. I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot here by saying this, but I'm a D&D virgin. So I do have friends that like play a lot of D&D. They tell me like you should get into it, like do this, do that. what are some of the don'ts, if you don't mind me asking? Like, don't fall into this pitfall whenever I decide to do it.
I've got my answers to this, and I'm sure everybody else does too. I'm just going to say the same things you would that are bad to do in real life are also bad to do in D&D. Don't show up and make it all about you. Do show up and use your mouth and your ears in correct proportion. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion. Do try to do as much prep as you can, as suits your personality. So if it's fun for you to be prepared, be prepared. If it's not fun for you to be prepared, then go and wing it. And then, I would say don't show up and try to make a bunch of waves your first time. Kind of sit back, be okay with a pre-gen character if you decide to play at GameFest this weekend, for example. Go find a table, go sit down. A DM is going to be there with the Adventurers League, and they're going to go, I have 3 characters to choose from. They're all pre-gen. Don't be like, I want this one with mustard. You know what I mean? Just go, I'll take that one, and I'll be, a ranger, and I'll just try being a ranger. And yeah.
I would recommend for your first game not to play a wizard of some kind.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's more complicated.
Unless you're willing to study
there's
beforehand.
more involved.
Because I've played games where someone else was a wizard because they in video games they're like, oh, I love being a wizard, and I can't it'd be like, all right, I do this. All right, cool, I do this. And literally their turn would take 20 minutes of them looking through their spell book, and they'd finally be like, I'm gonna cast this, and the DM's, you can't because of this, this, and this, and we're all just like, oh my gosh. So
that's the sort of but again, in life, I mean, if you go into a casino and you've never played blackjack before, and then you sit down at the table, and the guy next to you is this pro, and then you hit when you're supposed to hold or fold or whatever, he's gonna be like, God, what are you doing? You're ruining the blah blah blah. There's gonna be that guy. You're gonna play D&D with that guy. It's gonna happen. They're out there.
Not to shy you away from that class in general, but for your first time.
Yeah.
I would just say probably.
I would say don't forget about the other players, because I think it's that tendency, you've got your character sheet right in front of you. What can I do? What can I do? But I think the fun of tabletop gaming is the interaction between the players. So don't forget about them and the things that they can do and how you can interact with them to solve a problem.
And by interact, Mallory means fall in love.
Don't be
listen to
afraid
Game
to
Cheat.
fail. If you have to be flexible, and there are going to be times where you want to execute something in a certain way, and either the dice or the circumstance are going to fail you, and just move on from it. It is just like life. It doesn't always go according to the plan in our head. We had our little one-shot game with Tia and my husband and Rico. Rico built this super powerful character that should have been able to do all these amazing things, and he kept just rolling like a 2. Just everything. He couldn't get a leg up. And on the other hand, my husband was playing Hanson Jobbers, who was a halfling on his first ever adventure. He has had vivid dreams his whole life about a magic weapon, and he doesn't know what it is, but he knows it's the weapon he's meant to have.
I like that.
And so he starts with a stick that I let him use as a shillelagh. And that freaking stick just laid waste to everything. And we had this dark elf he's like a half dragon, and he's got
Dragonborn,
ice fire and all sorts of stuff, and he's just tangled up in weeds, and the Hanson just whack, you're dead. And it was frustrating. And Rico rallied from it and was just I guess this is my guy now. So you have to be able to just abandon whatever plan that you had for the sake of having fun.
Totally.
So there's no failure, there's only new information.
2 minutes. One more. question.
Don't attack shopkeepers. As a murder hobo, that was always a fun thing. Was to the DM trying to get us out of this item shop, and it's like, hang on, I'm gonna try and loot the shopkeeper again.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, the city guard comes in. I fight the city guard. That can really derail a game.
Or you're just dead.
Yeah. Or you're just.
Okay, one more question from somebody who has not asked one yet. One of you, I guess. Who do you want? Go ahead and pick.
Oni.
So, first off, which of you has played as a dungeon master?
Not me.
So, when it comes to playing D&D, do you use a more traditional setting like with elves, dwarves, or goblins and such, or do you go with a more creative route and make your own races and magic system? Because I have a friend who's been trying to get me into D&D, and he gave me a rundown on the various races that he created and the abilities they each have, and he even helped me make a character of my own.
That's
Nice.
impressive. I do
Yeah.
not have the time to do that. I would love to, but
Yeah. I mean, homebrews are fun, and people love to do stuff like that. So I say do it. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
Yeah, love a homebrew.
Maybe one more question, I guess.
As we're standing up,
Yes.
I started a club in a place down here, and I'm running like 4 campaigns as a DM.
Okay.
Goodness.
Yeah, and my biggest concern is player death. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, I've had one person act like I literally killed their own child.
Sure.
Like, how do you deal with that? How do you explain to them this is a game?
Yeah.
It's okay. We can keep playing, but
Yeah.
like, no, I'll never play again. You destroyed my life. And
It's grief. It's actual
Yeah.
grief for
There's-
those of us who are very character focused.
There
I've had
can
it
be-
happen, and it's just like
Yeah.
I have to mourn.
I was just telling him to
but
suck it
it's
up.
also yeah, it's also the character sheet's still right in front of
Sure.
me. We can put her somewhere else. I say her. It was a very specific instance,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I do, I some of it is level setting at the very beginning. You start as you mean to go. So when you sit down with these people, you make it very clear to them, however you want to do it, and you don't have to be mean about it, but you have to make it very clear to them, everything you do has consequences in this game. And and if you decide that your response to a troll, while your party's running away, is to run back towards that troll, you're gonna die. Like there's no. You have to, and even then, you're right. You can set those expectations, and
Nice.
people can still get upset. And like you said, all you can say are those things. It's a game. We can definitely do it. We'll get you in. You can be the goblins in this next fight or whatever. You can get people back involved. So, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Come see us tomorrow night,
Thank
6
you.
p.m.